As the title says, today we're going to speak about quality expression in Senhaja Berber and beyond. And by beyond, I don't mean all other languages of the world, but we will stay within the Berber language family. Here you can see the contents of the presentation. In the introduction, I will speak briefly about Berber languages and what qualification is. In part 2, I will speak about qualification in Berber in general and in Senhaja in particular. And in part 3, we will zoom in on adjectives in Senhaja. Part 4 is devoted to a survey I conducted regarding qualification in Berber. And finally, there will come conclusions. So, let's begin. What are Berber languages and where are they spoken? Here you can see a not very detailed map showing that Berber languages are spoken in a wide territory across North Africa, from Morocco in the west to Siwa Oasis in the east, in Egypt, while there is also Senhaja Berber in Mauritania and several Tuareg varieties across several countries. But in today's presentation, I will exclude Senhaja and Tuareg from the discussion, and I will only speak about northern Berber languages. In this slide, we zoom in on northern Morocco, and here you can see Senhaja Berber between Ghomara Berber, spoken more to the west, and Rifian Berber, or Tarifid, spoken more to the east. The Rifian Berber is a big brother of Senhaja, but it is distinct from Senhaja. This slide shows 10 Senhaja Berber varieties. The variation within Senhaja is quite large, to the point that Gutova Berber speakers in the west do not understand easily Zerqet or Mizdui speakers in the east of Senhaja. In the subsequent slides, I will only refer to these 6 Senhaja varieties. And more specifically, I like to give examples from Gutova Berber, the westernmost Senhaja variety, Zerqet, the easternmost variety, or Hamed, spoken in the middle, central Senhaja. Senhaja Berber is not among the best described Berber varieties, but there is some literature, most recently my PhD thesis, and the present talk is based on fieldwork data. What is important to know is that Senhaja Berber speakers are all bilingual in Berber and local Arabic, and their language is heavily influenced by Arabic. The main source of income for the local population is agriculture, namely growing cannabis. So if you want to do fieldwork on Senhaja, you have to do actual fieldwork in the field. Now let's look at what qualification is. It is useful to distinguish between comparative concepts in typology and descriptive categories. I discuss quality words as a comparative concept and true adjectives as a descriptive category. By quality words, I mean words that express quality or that denote properties. In most Berber languages, there are no true adjectives, but instead we find 2 major kinds of quality words. There are quality nouns and there are quality verbs. Some Berber languages also have a distinct class of stative verbs. They are a subcategory of verbs but have distinct morphological markers. Now, in Senhaja, as in other Berber languages, quality expression can be carried out by verbs or by nouns. There are no stative verbs, but stative verbs found in other Berber languages correspond to adjectives. Native Berber adjectives is a very small class in Senhaja, and it is very probable that this class developed in Senhaja from stative verbs. And this evolution could be caused by influence from Arabic, from which Senhaja borrowed many adjectives. Since qualification in Senhaja and other Berber languages is carried out by different means, we can say that quality words in Berber are a hybrid class. In Senhaja, quality words are even more hybrid since they also include adjectives. Many concepts can be expressed by multiple word classes, and borders between word classes are fluid. Let's look at qualification in Berber in more detail. Let's start with quality nouns. They refer to things. They can function as subjects, as other nouns, but they can also be used attributively. They distinguish 2 genders and 2 numbers, 4 forms in total. For example, the noun for white one in central Senhaja is Amin-Lui, Thamin-Luif, Imin-Luyen, Thimi-Luyin. As you can see, gender and number is expressed by prefixes and suffixes. The nouns used as predicates and used as attributes have the same morphology. But when a noun functions as a predicate, there is a predicative particle the in some verbal languages. For example, aham vamilui, the house is white, with the predicative particle the preceding the quality noun. Now let's look at the quality verbs. Quality verbs express events, function as predicates, as usual verbs, but describe properties. Like regular verbs in verba, they take subject indexes, marking person, number, and gender. They also distinguish three aspects, like regular verbs: the aorist, the perfective, and the imperfective. The perfective of quality verbs expresses a state or a result, while the imperfective expresses the beginning of a state, incoative, or a progression of a state. For example, in Eastern Senhaja, there is the verb mjul, to be white, and imjul in the perfective means it is white, a state, while itmjulai in the imperfective either expresses incoative, it is becoming white, or a progression of a state, it is becoming whiter. Let's look at the stative verbs. Some verbal languages have regularly conjugated verbs, which can include quality verbs, and stative verbs. Stative verbs are conjugated by suffixes only, so they do not have prefixes. For example, in Kabyle Berber, in Algeria, we have a regularly conjugated verb together. For example, he gathered yigmir, she gathered thigmir, they gathered gimrin. And compare with a stative conjugation, which has no prefixes. For the third masculine singular, it is clean, zdig, without the prefix ye. Third feminine singular, zdigeth, with a suffix th instead of the prefix th, and the third plural, zdigif, they are clean, the suffix if instead of n. Now let's turn to the adjectives in Senhaja and their possible link with the stative verbs. In Senhaja, there are true adjectives. They express properties, function as modifiers, and agree with a noun in gender and number. There are two subclasses of adjectives, the ones which are borrowed from Arabic, which are numerous, and a few which are native Berber. The Arabic and Berber adjectives have different morphological markers, but fulfill the same function. The same situation is found in Homara Berber, spoken more to the west. Arabic adjectives are borrowed with their morphology, which includes apophonic plurals. Berber adjectives have markers reminiscent of the stative conjugation. Let's look at this example from Central Senhaja. For the Arabic adjective expressing white, we have biez, feminine singular bayda with the suffix a, and in the plural bayvin with the suffix in, or buyez with the apophonic plural. There is also a native Berber adjective expressing the same concept, white, which has the following forms. In the masculine singular, millui, without prefixes or suffixes. In the feminine singular, milluyeth, with the suffix f, which is shared with the stative conjugation in Kabyle. And in the plural, milluyan, with the suffix n and not if, as we have seen in Kabyle. But this could have been regularized under the influence of the plural forms of verbs or nouns in Berber. The adjectives, unlike quality nouns, do not require the predicative particle the, which also proves that they are a separate part of speech. To express the house is white, we can say aham vamilui with a quality noun with the predicative particle the, or aham milui using the Berber adjective without suffixes or prefixes for the masculine singular agreement, or aham bied, the Arabic adjective. Now we're going to look at the marking of adjectives. In some Senhaja dialects, adjectives can be conjugated, and this is also found in Zenaga in Mauritania. Conjugation can be either regular, as found with verbs, that is, expressed by both prefixes and suffixes, or it can be special, carried out by suffixes only, as in the stative conjugation. Let's look at the Berber native adjectives first. We find three different types of behavior, that is, special conjugation, by suffixes only, regular conjugation, prefixes and suffixes, or adjectives are not conjugated. Different types can occur within the same dialect, and there is no real dialect continuum. Let's look at this example, you are small or you are young. In Tarzut, it's expressed by miziv or hiji miziv with the suffix the, reminiscent of the stative conjugation in Kabyle, expressed by suffixes only. Instead, we find tmziv or hiji tmziv. The conjugation is regular, expressed by prefixes and suffixes. In kitama, as the only option, and as a second option in tarzut, we find hiji mzi. In this case, the adjective is not conjugated, it only marks the gender and the number, in this case masculine singular, and the use of the pronoun becomes obligatory. The same form, mzi, will be also used for third masculine singular and the first person singular masculine. This table shows dialectal variation when it comes to the marking of adjectives. I have also included a mini-map of Senhaja varieties so that you see the geographical distribution of the forms. The special conjugation by suffixes only is found in tarzut, bunsar, and in zerkat. The regular conjugation by prefixes and suffixes is found as the only option instead, but also as a second option in zerkat. For non-conjugated adjectives, they are found as the only option in kitama and in ahmed, and as another option in tarzut, bunsar, and zerkat. So unconjugated adjectives are found in the west, in the center, and in the east of Senhaja. This slide reminds that different types of behavior can co-occur. For example, special conjugation and non-conjugated adjectives can be found in bunsar and tarzut, while all three types of behavior are found in zerkat. So how can we explain these different types of behavior in different Senhaja varieties? In my opinion, we can explain it if we take the stative conjugation as the original citation in Senhaja. That's why we find remnants of this conjugation in different parts of Senhaja. And then we have different developments in different Senhaja varieties. Instead, the stative conjugation is regularized, and these lexemes receive regular verbal markers. While in some other varieties, the conjugation ceases, probably following an Arabic model, and this is how native adjectives emerged in Senhaja. This is the only option in Kitama and Ahmed, the most Arabic-influenced Senhaja varieties, and we also find it as a possibility in Tarzut, Bunsar, and Zerkat. Concerning Arabic adjectives, they are not conjugated in most parts of Senhaja, but can be conjugated in some varieties. In the varieties where Arabic adjectives are conjugated, they are conjugated with the special markers, similar to Berber adjectives and stated verbs. For example, for the sentence, you are good, you can use Arabic adjective mizyan with the second person singular marker, mizyaniv. In varieties where conjugated and non-conjugated adjectives co-occur, they are found in the same context. As in this example from Tarzut, you became big or old, tgholid muqor with a non-conjugated adjective, or tgholid muqrad with a conjugated adjective. Conjugated adjectives are distinct from normally conjugated verbs, even if they are cognates. For example, muqorah, conjugated adjective, I am big, I'm old, is distinct from muqorah, I grew up, I became big, a dynamic verb. Now we are going to look at the survey that I conducted across different Berber varieties regarding qualification. The survey is based on the questionnaire, which includes 113 property concepts found in the book Qualification in African Languages. I have conducted the survey for 3 Senhaja varieties, West, Center, and East, and some other Berber languages. You can find some results of this survey consulting the following link. I hope I will keep updating the database. And everyone is welcome to participate, even if you are not working on Berber. So now let's look at the preliminary results. It's amazing how much time I spent collecting and organizing the data and how it all fits in one slide, but let's look at it in more detail. First, let's look at adjectives. In this survey, Arabic adjectives and Berber adjectives are counted together. Since Berber adjectives are too few in number to count them separately, and since they're not found outside Senhaja. Within Senhaja, adjectives progress from east to west, that is, from Zerkat to Kitama, and the number of adjectives is the highest in Kitama. In other Berber varieties outside Senhaja, adjectives is a very marginal category. It's usually 2 or 3%, represented always by Arabic adjectives only, which are not integrated into the Berber morphological system. They can be considered as exceptions. Now let's look at the verbs. Within Senhaja, that quality verbs, contrary to adjectives, grow in number from west to east. And they grow further the more east we go, peaking in 30 feet. And then they diminish when we go further to the east until we reach Siwa in Egypt. Now let's look at quality nouns. Like verbs and contrary to adjectives, they grow from west Senhaja to east Senhaja and further east, peaking in Siwa, which is the easternmost variety of the survey. So what we get is that in Siwa, nouns are the most frequently used part of speech to express properties, while verbs were the most frequently used quality words in Tarifit. And in westernmost Senhaja, Kitama, adjectives were the most frequently used quality words. What I haven't spoken about and what is not expressed in the graphs is the following. First of all, some properties are expressed by other word classes, not nouns or verbs or adjectives. We find adverbs, pseudo-verbs, and they constitute around 2 or 3% among quality concepts. Second, some concepts from the questionnaire do not have a single word equivalent in Berber at all, and are expressed by phrases instead. These can be verbal phrases, nominal phrases, prepositional phrases, and they can include negation. For example, to express brave, you could say the one without fear, who does not fear, who is not afraid, and such phrases constitute from 2 to 18% depending on the variety. What is also important is that the same concept can be expressed by different word classes, so we can speak of flexible lexemes. For example, in Gulmima Berber in Central High Atlas in Morocco, around 29% of quality words are flexible, typically expressed by nouns or by verbs. We also find flexible lexemes in Senhaja. For example, in Zakhet, Eastern Senhaja, we have the adjective qsir and the corresponding verb qsir, to be short. In Kitama or Western Senhaja, this rarely happens. Some adjectives do have a cognate verb, but then the verb would express a change of state. For example, the adjective qsir would correspond to the verb qsar, to become short. Before we go to conclusions, let's look at a couple of other examples. We have a lexeme missus, insipid, and it can be expressed by different parts of speech. In Kitama and Ahmed, it can be expressed by an Arabic adjective with the Arabic markers. As a second option, in Ahmed, it can be expressed by a Berber adjective, missus, missusat, missusan, while in Zakhet, it is conjugated as a regular verb, imissus, missus, missusan. For the words for white, we have an Arabic borrowed adjective, bief, beiza, buyaz, as the only option in Kitama, also used in Ahmed. In Ahmed, we have a Berber native adjective with the Berber markers, milui, miluyeth, miluyan. We have a quality noun in Ahmed and Zakhet with some phonological differences, amilui or amijul, thamiluith, thamijulth, imiluyan, imijulen. And we also have a verb used in Zakhet, imjul, thmjul, mjulen. And now we have reached the conclusions. Quality words are a hybrid class in Berber in general and in Senhaja especially. In most Berber languages, qualification is carried out either by quality nouns or by quality verbs. In Senhaja, besides those, we also find a distinct class of adjectives with two subclasses, borrowed and native ones, with different morphological markers. Adjectives are most likely an innovation in Senhaja. Arabic adjectives are clearly a result of borrowing, while Berber adjectives most likely evolved from old stative verbs. And this evolution most likely has been caused by Arabic influence. Synchronically, Arabic and Berber adjectives constitute one word class. Some Senhaja varieties allow for conjugated adjectives, but conjugated adjectives are nevertheless not verbs. They have distinct morphological markers and they have no aspectual distinction, which distinguishes them from verbs. Conjugated adjectives could be also called quasi-verbs, that is, a category between adjectives and verbs. So we could speak of a continuum between non-verbs and verbs. Adjectives mark only gender and number, while conjugated adjectives also mark the person as verbs, but lack aspectual distinctions. And once again, borders between word classes are fluid. By looking at quality words in Senhaja, we can see the role of language change and language contact in the emergence of a word class, and variation across dialects and different quality words allows one to trace the evolution of adjectives as a word class in Senhaja. To sum up, there are as many Senhaja varieties as people in this photo, and there are as many Berber varieties as there are people in this photo, and they all may behave differently when it comes to quality expression. I thank you for your attention, and if you want to read the text of the slides and find bibliography, please consult the following link.